up the dive. Feel the vibe, get ready to ignite. Untold stories in the airways, flying through the night. Experience voices, tales so bold. Streaming live, the truth unfolds. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's so I remember I. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can't hide. Aliens in the attic, UFOs in the sky. Cryptids lurking, oh my, oh my. Ghosts in the hallway, whispering your name. The paranormal, the unexplained. Come to VIP, get the inside scoop. Unlock the mysteries, be part of the group. Live streaming stories, they're talking to you. Super chats buzzing, join the crew. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's a wild member ride. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can hide. So if you've got the guts and you want to explore, tune into the untold, it's what you're looking for. From aliens to ghosts and all that's unseen. Untold Radio Network, where the world's mysteries convene.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Paranormal Spectrum. I see we have some early morning risers here with us today. We are live a little bit earlier than normal, and that's because myself and my guest today both work the third shift. So we would like to go to bed. And it just so happens to work out easier that instead of doing a pre-recorded episode, we can go live early. So that's what we are going to do today. We are live in studio right now for you guys. Thank you all for tuning in or listening after the fact, whichever you're doing. But guys, coming up, we have some awesome stuff coming from Caps. We have the Hairy Man of Dairyland, Wisconsin's Bigfoot. Our brand new documentary is out now. You can stream it on Paraflix Paranormal Plus, or you can get it on our Patreon page at Wisconsin Caps. If you want to meet myself and my team in person, we are going to be in Chicago, Illinois, at the Chicago Paranormal Convention, June 7th. Over 80 vendors, speakers. It's going to be a great time. Only $1 admission and free parking. You can't beat that anywhere in the Chicagoland area. And then we have some library presentations coming up all across Wisconsin. I will be in Lodi, Wisconsin in June, Cedarburg, Wisconsin, July 17th. And we are doing a really cool CE5 UFO skywatching event in southern Wisconsin. It is CAPS and PBS Wisconsin teaming up to put on this event, as well as the Central Wisconsin CE5 group on Facebook. So you can go over there for all the information and the details, location, and such. Otherwise, you can head on over to Wisconsin CAPS and click on the public events tab, and you can find it there. Then, guys, we are going to be at UFO Days in Elmwood, Wisconsin, SilCon in Gaze, Illinois, and the Van Meter Visitor Festival in Van Meter, Iowa. And then finally, guys, in October, we are going to be at the Neenah Public Library for a special paranormal presentation and ghost hunt. You don't want to miss that one. That's all coming up, guys. It's going to be a great rest of the year. Hopefully you can join us for some of that stuff. But now, please welcome my guest of today's show. All right, guys, we are live today with fellow third shift worker Sam Baltrusis. He is the author of Ghosts of Salem, Haunts of the Witch City, and featured in The Curse of Lizzie Borden. He has penned 18 paranormal-themed books, including Haunted Boston Harbor and Ghosts of the American Revolution. He has been featured on several national television shows, including the Travel Channel's A Haunting, Most Terrifying Places, Haunted Towns, and Fright Club 1 and 2. He has also made a cameo in the documentary The House in Between Two, and on several other additional television programs, including History's Most Haunted, Paranormal Nightshift, and Forbidden History. Baltrusis is a sought-after lecturer who speaks at libraries and paranormal-related events nationwide. And he joins us here live today. Please welcome Sam to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. You know, I've read your bio so many times the last couple of weeks and stuff, and it was only today that I realized it was Fright Club and not Fight Club. And I was like, man, I got to ask you about this. You were in Fight Club, and
1 and 2.
yeah, 1 and 2. And I was like, oh man, well, we can't talk about it because it's Fight Club. So I'm glad it's Fight Club and we can actually bring it up. So yeah, that's my mornings going right there. So how are you doing, sir?
Doing well. Yeah, I like the fact that I have somebody in the field that understands the third shift or the graveyard shifts. And yeah, so for me personally, I love it because I get a lot done. And I work at a hotel. Sometimes I work at a haunted hotel. The one I work at currently is up for debate whether or not it's actually haunted. But I also write my books during the overnight shift too. So but the only problem is like this is like for us, this is like 1 in the morning or 2 in the morning.
Yep, yeah, absolutely. I like it because I can do the shows. I can do all the any research. Like if I get a investigation call or something like footprints for Bigfoot or something, I have all day to go out and do it, and I don't have to worry about work. I just have to find a way to sleep around it. So it works great for me. So absolutely, that's perfect. So let's see, where do we want to start? I actually would like to ask you a question, your opinion on something. So
Sure.
I don't know if you followed like the news and stuff. It's kind of been on all over Facebook and stuff. What are your thoughts on this whole Annabelle situation that's kind of touring the country right now? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I oddly have I'm friends with some of the people that are involved with the touring. So Father Bob Bailey, he and I are very close. He's actually based in Rhode Island. He's the priest that has gone with Annabelle and blessed Annabelle in various cities throughout the country. I'm also friends with Ryan Buell, who is sort of like the spokesperson, and Nesper. So I haven't, I don't like dolls. I really don't. Like, I'm not dolls creep me out, dolls and clowns and aliens too, but we'll save that for another topic, another discussion. But for me, so Annabelle, I have, I've been in the room with Annabelle. I've done the Warren's Paracon multiple times, and last year it was in Gettysburg. So the idea that this is new it's not. It's something that's been going on for years. Annabelle has traveled a lot. In fact, it was a part of the Warrens' legacy. I mean, they would bring Annabelle artifacts from their museum with them on tour. So this is something that Lorraine and Ed did when they would tour the country at various colleges. So the idea that this is a new phenomenon, that Annabelle should stay in her blessed box and just sit there in Connecticut is not what's happened. And so I've been on tour with Annabelle, if you will, last year in Gettysburg and also at the Warrens Convention in Connecticut. So I've been in the same room with Annabelle. I personally don't. What's the word? I feel like some of the objects in the museum, they're all together in one room, and so I did have an experience walking into the room with those objects where I heard a voice say, "Get me out! Like let me out! Let me out!" Now, was it Annabelle or was it something else? I tend to think it was one of the other objects and not Annabelle. So I've always kind of thought Annabelle has been overhyped, and that people have turned it into something that may have been animated, may have had a spirit attached to it at one point, and it's kind of turned into like a demonic vessel, and so it holds a demon, and so I think that you have to look at the whole story and how the story has devolved over the years, and then look at the circumstantial situation with the fires happening in New Orleans. I will say this, and I got my hair cut yesterday. My hairdresser asked me the same question. So she was like, "What do you think?" So she's like, because also it's New Orleans, and I grew up in Chicago. My dad was in the Navy, so I was also in Pensacola, Florida. So I would go to New Orleans throughout my teens, like a big part of my life. The energy in New Orleans is off the hook, and so you have something like Annabelle in New Orleans, it could explode. I just feel like that the energy with all that happening, it really can do something. So I think that the beginnings of Annabelle was I would say not demonic, and I think what's happened is there's so much energy. It's almost like feeding off of people's expectations and their ideas to the point where it almost has become an egregore. And that the energy associated with it almost has taken on a life of its own. So I do think that it was probably, in my opinion, I think it was a bad idea to bring Annabelle to New Orleans, of all places, because I think New Orleans just is already kind of an energetic location, and almost you have two different forces together. It could go polar, it could kind of explode, which I think is kind of what happened, or it could just sort of she could just be part of the ghosts that are already there, and so I think it almost worked in a repellent. And I think that Annabelle's to blame for the fire at the plantation, and also Marie Laveau's house also burned down too. And I find that really kind of odd. I really do. And do I think that Annabelle did it? I don't know, but I do feel like when because I'm actually friends with one of the tour guides from that plantation, and he's brokenhearted over that location. But there's a dark history there, and it was a plantation. So being a tour guide at a location that had enslaved people must have been kind of a very tough job to do. So I'm sure it was a beautiful place, but it had a very dark history, and whether or not they actually talked about the history is up for debate. I'm not sure if they did. So I was going to visit that plantation in January, and now I can't because it's burned down. So long story short, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if Annabelle caused this. I just think it's kind of odd, the two locations that burned.
Yeah, I didn't hear about Marie Laveau's. I heard about the plantation, and then there was the escaped prisoners, and then there was also a semi truck or something that was hauling Annabelle.
Yeah. For me, the plantation for me, I didn't even think there couldn't be tied, and I was seeing posts that look what Annabelle did. Annabelle burned down the plantation, and then I saw the Marie Laveau's house burning down, and it burned down. And what's also, and I don't know if this is true or not, because the news is of course kind of glorified, it's kind of over the top in the reporting, but the thought that they say that it was put out and then it started up again, and that to me is suspicious. That's elemental energies going on there, a fire elemental.
No, All very good points. I mean, like who really knows for sure, but you're absolutely right where you're having these locations that have a lot of energy and spirits of their own, and now you're bringing in something from the outside that, maybe they're not, maybe something that was in the manor or the plantation itself didn't like that she was there. And that's
Right.
what caused the problem. Vice versa. Everyone's blaming Annabelle, but it could have been the spirits of the locations themselves. So
And I'm friends with one of the tour guides at the plantation, and I'm like, how did it start? And like, he said that it started on the second floor, and it's kind of a mystery. Like, why would there be fire in a historic location? And Marie Laveau's like the oven caught on fire, so there's a stove there, so there's a fire source at a historic property. I know from going to historic properties pretty much every weekend, you can't light a candle, you can't do anything with fire at these locations, and it's just shocking that the fire started at the second floor and they're really not sure how it started.
it's weird. Interesting. Awesome. Well, this kind of leads us into more of the topics that I wanted to talk about as well today, because we've already talked about like how there's so much energy in Louisiana and New Orleans and stuff. So you've written a lot about these different areas that are very hot spots. Like the whole town seems to have these energies, like New Orleans and you said Boston and Salem, for example. Where all have you written books on so far? And I know you have a whole haunted towns book, right?
Yeah, so I mean, I tend to kind of I tend to focus on specific areas and I immerse myself at those locations. So I've written two books on Salem. Salem is the one that I'm known for. So Ghost of Salem is uh, my baby. It's the one that I put the most time into. And my second book on Salem is called Wicked Salem. So and all my TV shows for the most part are on Salem, but other locations that I've focused on as well. I've written about Sleepy Hollow, which was my most recent book, and was so much fun to write because it was not as heavy as Ghost of Salem and Wicked Salem. Because Salem, you have the Salem witch trials and the guilt associated with the witch trials and the horrors that happened in 1692. And then Sleepy Hollow, it's the monster is based on a fictional tale that may have some basis in reality, but for the most part, it's Washington Irving's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow was the inspiration for what's going on there. So I think it was great to kind of go to a location that didn't have the heaviness that I feel when I give tours in Salem, or if I'm in Salem. I've like while I write my books, I tend to work in the location. So I have worked in Salem. I've given tours pretty much for every tour group in Salem, and I worked at a hotel, the overnight shift at a hotel, and that was a doozy. That was interesting.
I bet. Awesome. I was telling you before the show, I've actually been to Salem, but unfortunately I was there in December off season. So I got to go to the museum and stuff and kind of walk around the town, and it definitely has a really cool feel to it. But I didn't get to do all the touristy things because none of it was open. But
Yeah, a lot of people ask me like, where do you go in Salem? I mean, it's Salem. Like the whole town is stained with blood, and so just the energy. They're very much like New Orleans. New Orleans is very similar. And people ask me like, what do I think is the most haunted town or haunted city in America? I always say Salem because I'm of course biased, but I also feel New Orleans is high on the list too. And other locations, I mean, I think Savannah. I just came back from Savannah a few months ago. Savannah is very high on my list too. So I do feel that some cities, because of the history, because of all the ghosts, like to me, the big factor is our ghost tours. Because I know in Salem, it's a big part of our local tourism economy. So the ghost tours, almost like they stir the pot, and I feel like that it, like the spirits that we talk about. There, I have some situations in Salem that the ghost, the person that we're talking about on our tour, like the lady in the blue dress, which is a big kind of like a story that we tell on our tours over and over again. It's this woman, she wears blue. In the early 1800s, she was pregnant. She was waiting for her boyfriend, who was a sailor to come in from the Salem harbor, and when she tells him that she's pregnant, he flips and he kills her. And according to legend, she's buried in the bowels of what is modern day Rockefeller's, which is it's a restaurant that's right on the corner of Essex and Washington Street. So the thing is, people have seen the lady in the blue dress. I have photos on my tours. Like people would go on my tours and take pictures at the location, and there would pop up what looked like a woman in a blue dress. And I'm like, okay. But the thing is, she never existed. And I tried so hard to find the story. And I'm sure that there was something similar that happened. And maybe this spirit that's showing up in photos and has been seen by, mediums and all sorts of people that visit Salem, somehow like this spirit may have actually been a real person, but I just can't find the backstory, especially that story, the story of a woman being pregnant and being killed. However, I strongly believe in egregores and thought forms. And so I do feel by us telling the story, we almost gave this entity life. And if you look at the pictures, looks like a woman, but it's almost a monstrous manifestation of a woman, almost like a monster, like almost like something that's been created, and like a Frankenstein entity or Frankenstein spirit. So I do feel that she's real, but how did she come about? That's the question.
Interesting. There's a research project that was done at one of these like universities and stuff, where they literally manifested a spirit. They gave it a name, they gave it a whole backstory and stuff, completely fabricated. And then eventually, by doing that and working on it hard enough, they actually got to have a spirit communication with this entity that claimed to be the spirit of the person that they were talking to. I knew the name of this project, but now it's escaping me.
It's the Phillips experiment. So
that is yep.
So Philip was created. So like a thought form. The thing is, like a tulpa and a thought form manifestation is kind of two different like schools of thought of it, but usually it's an individual. But when you have a collective creating, usually you would call it an egregore. And I feel like a lot of what's going on in Salem and also in New Orleans is stuff that's been created. I think that so when you go into these haunted towns like New Orleans, when you have voodoo practitioners and weekend witches and weekend all sorts of like necromancy stuff going on, I think that does stir the pot and it creates things like if you're kind of calling up the dead, where do they go? And so I think that Salem is like I have a lot of friends who are witches and who are really good at what they do. In fact, I reach out to them a lot if I need protection, because I feel like witches have the best protection in the field. However, I do think that there are people that watch Hocus Pocus and like Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and they're like, I want to go to Salem, and they can do stuff, and I've seen it happen actually. And they don't know what they're doing, and God knows what is conjured up or summoned while they're doing this. So I just feel like, and it always involves a spirit board. Like there's always something that they do that causes problems, and a lot of like what I find too, and I think that these darker entities is that they feed off fear. So if you're giving it fear, it's going to attack you because it gets more energy from you and it's going to get stronger. So I would, someone that has been attacked a lot in my past, I've learned that lesson. The more emotion you put out there, the more they will come after you. And so I've learned to kind of control my emotions, and it actually works. So that's a lesson learned after many, many years of getting scratched and pushed, and all sorts of things happen to me along the way. So I just feel I feel like that like you go to Salem, you're expecting to be scared, and you're gonna be scared because you're expecting to be scared.
Very interesting. So we've talked about Salem and New Orleans. I don't know why that name just keeps escaping me every time I try and say it, but Salem and New Orleans. So they both have very like witch and voodoo and stuff like these energies around them. And I was going to ask you this before you even brought it up. When I was like growing up and watching all the ghost hunter shows and all that stuff, the one paranormal place I always wanted to go, and I haven't yet, is Savannah, Georgia. And you've already kind of poked at that a little bit. But so tell me a little bit more about, so what's going on there? Why is that town seem to have so much energy to it?
Well, so all three places that you mentioned, there's tragedy in the backstory. And
Mhm.
so I think that that's really important. It's almost like an aura of disaster. So Salem has the 1692 witch trials. Savannah had, of course, the Civil War and even Native American trauma that happened on the land as well. And they also have very similar to New Orleans, like voodoo, hoodoo, all sorts of practices that deviate from sort of like the Judeo-Christian norm of the area. And so I think that the history in Savannah and all these places, I think it's the darker history has sort of, I guess swept, like it's almost like trauma tourism. So we're going to these locations instead of like respecting the innocent victims. In the case of Salem, we go there and we wear our witch hats. Maybe the spirits are upset, like maybe they're
Mhm.
like, hey, like this is my home, why are you invading my land, like my property, and why are you wearing a witch hat, like mocking, I just feel like that it's like, I wish there was more respect for the spirits. And I think that like a lot of people in our field, I do feel like that is a big part of what I know like when I teach or when I investigate, that's really important, is to honor the dead. And I think also if you talk to the witches in Salem, that's a big part of the witches, how witches, like true witches, how they function. Like, it's about honoring the dead. It's the ones that have watched The Conjuring and they want to be scared, or they seen something on Ghost Hunters and they want to like do something in Savannah or New Orleans, and they just cause issues by being disrespectful. And so I feel like that there is a darker history in all three of those cities, and I think that you can feel it. And I think that there's a reason why we're pulled to them too, because they're beautiful. I mean, all three locations are so beautiful and have so much history, both good and bad. And I feel like that those are the ties to, in my opinion, to those three cities.
Very interesting. I'm definitely not a fan of paranormal tourism in general. Like, like for the reasons that you just said, there's a lack of respect and a lack of learning anything. People go to these locations and, can you make a noise? Can you make this light up? Can you, parlor tricks, right? Like, people don't give the respect to the spirits of the people that are there. And I think that that's the main thing that needs to change with this, that when you go on these investigations and tours and stuff, that you respect the people, that the spirits of the people that you're there to meet and communicate with.
And I think, especially in Salem, when I first started, the tours that I even gave in the early days were very much about, like, because people came to Salem wanting to be scared, and so like there was a certain expectation that you would kind of like speak with a fake Cockney accent, and you would wear like a vampire costume or a witch
Mhm.
costume or something, and so there was more of a theatrical element to the tours. And I noticed over the past 12, 13 years, and I hope that somehow I played a role in this, because I feel like when I wrote my book, I was historically correct. So I did talk about the ghosts, but I also got the history correct too. And that's really hasn't really been done before. And so I think there's been a push by the younger generation to get the facts correct. So the tours that kind of make up the stories that still exist. I mean, like the stories, and I find even in my books, they'll take one piece from the book and turn it into this whole like story that ends up on a tour. So,
Mhm.
and it's a little heartbreaking when you hear, like, there's a house called Rope's Mansion in Salem, and that's where the movie Hocus Pocus, what part of it was shot at that house. beautiful mansion. There, and in my book, I talk about there's been multiple kind of freak fires that happened at this location over the years. Like, it doesn't make any sense why this mansion keeps catching on fire. And digging in the backstory, there was actually a woman who she was bringing up coals to the fireplace and her dress caught on fire, so she burned alive. So my theory is that perhaps that, that the house is in a rust because this woman, Nabby is what people called her. It was Abigail was her real name. What she's sticking around because she's upset, obviously, and people are going there. But the thing is, like, the story's turned into like they've seen the apparition of a woman and she was in fire, she was in flames, looking out the window. I'm like, that is not what's going on there. And so they turn into this really, really dramatic story, and it's not based in reality. I think, it makes me a little disheartened when I see like my words turned into sort of like a story on a real person. This is a real woman that literally did burn alive, and why can't we honor her and not like turn her story into this crazy inflamed woman, this burning woman, looking out at people and chasing people on the streets of Salem? It's crazy.
No, absolutely, 100%. It's terrible that I don't want to say every TV show that's out there, but the majority of these shows that you watch on television about paranormal and stuff, everything has to be a horror story. That these demonic entities are out there, this scary ghost that is seen walking hallways and stuff. It's just a ghost. It's a person, that a spirit, that's trapped, that needs help. And you're demonizing these people that are out there in these locations. And I wish that there was more honest paranormal, because it gives bad reputation to the people like yourself and myself that go out there and do the research of these things to get to the bottom of why they're haunted and to try and share that story. And then the TV networks come in and twist it all, like you said, into this big horror story and make their own story up. So
yeah, I mean, I was, in addition to being on a lot of TV shows, I've also been a producer. I was a producer on season 11 of A Haunting. So yes, there's an expectation for stories to kind of be a little bit more played well for the TV audience. I will say, compared to what I've seen on YouTube and on streaming platforms, I think TV has been for the most part. There's a few bad eggs out in the field. For the most part, have been respectful. I mean, you and I, you've done television. I've done television. We have some really great people that are respectful people that have not gone there. We haven't said everything was a demon, but if you watch the YouTube shows, every time you'll see like demon in Salem. And I mean, that was even on a show that I was on. I filmed and it got like a million views. And it turned into like, demon in Salem. And I'm like, no, I never said it was a demon. It's a really pissed off, male energy. And it's probably a family member. I'm probably related to it. And it wears a hat. It's not the Hat Man that's like a demon, but it's a man that has a pilgrim hat from the 1600s.
There's a really good series, and now the name of it's escaping me, but they went around. It was with Dave Schrader, and they went around to different like cities, and they found like the whole city's haunted by, like the one was a mine, and the guy that discovered the mine, and he was the one haunting the city. And those are really interesting, like, because it tells the story of the city, and we were talking about My Haunted Hometown as well. I worked on that, and you'd talked with them as well, so there are specific TV shows that go around and do a pretty decent job of that.
Yeah. And everything, like every show that I've been on, it's been really important for me. Like, I want it to be like a history lesson in addition to having some, of course, some truth to it. Like, I'm telling my story, but I made sure that that the history is correct. And I had to fight for that. It wasn't easy. It wasn't something that was just handed to me. I was on a show called, speaking of Dave Schrader, I was on a show called Curse of Lizzie Borden, and I was with Dave Schrader and Chris Fleming. And They wanted it to be a little bit more to tie in Salem into it, and I'm like, there are no ties to Salem, and it's in Fall River. Fall River is very far from Salem, and they. So when I say they, it's the network. So there are situations where the network does want to sensationalize it a little bit, but you got to, as talent, as someone that's on camera, you have to fight for the truth. Do not, and this is something that was told to me early on, whether it's writing books or doing television shows. I'm good friends with John Zaffis, and John Zaffis has almost been a mentor for me. And John's like, Sam, he's like, don't ever say it's demonic. Because what's going to happen if you say it's demonic, people will remember that. And God bless him, because I feel like that was, I mean, you know how many times that producers were like, would you say that that's demonic? And I'm like, no, it was absolutely not demonic. I've actually walked off set on 2 shows where they were wanting me to say that it was the D word. And I'm not going to say, because 99.9% of the time, it's not the D word. It's something else that's been misidentified. And we're doing a disservice to not only to our community, but to the general public if we see everything as a demon. It's just gonna, it's what if, like, it's almost like crying wolf. Like, what if a real demon enters your space? How are you think everything's a demon? Then how are you going to handle it?
Absolutely. It's very, very important to only say things that you're comfortable with. Like, they can only use footage that you've said, right? So every answer that you give is very thought out and very, how can they twist my words to make it sound like I said something else? And yeah, it's a tricky game.
There was one show I did, and I don't put it on my resume. It's called Haunted USA, and Haunted USA, and the producer that was on it, she and I are good friends now. We actually worked together on a haunting, but so she ended up bringing me on the show, and she had to leave because of health issues. But the new producer that came on the show wanted me to say that it was the woman. There's a woman, the lady in the white, that's in the cemetery. And like, I saw this woman, it was like a ball of light that got bigger and bigger and took the shape of a woman. And it was coming from Giles Corey's second wife, Mary Corey. And she, like, the producer, not my friend, but the one that came on after, he wanted it to be Martha Corey, who was Giles Corey's wife that was executed in Salem witch trials, because her name is known. They wanted it to be someone that it wasn't, and so they twisted the whole. They're like, so who was Giles Corey's third wife? And I'm like, Martha Corey. And so they took it and they spliced Martha Corey onto Mary Corey. And I will never forget that, because even if you say the right words, they still will find a way to twist your words. So I say that TV has, for the most part, got it correct. I've had to fight for it. I had that, and I learned my lesson. I'm like, I will never allow that to happen again. And I had to fight for it. I've had to walk off set when I felt like it was not being respectful. I've walked off podcasts before if I felt like that they weren't being respectful of the spirits and of my work in the field, because it makes me look bad. I mean, you go in and you talk about your experience, and then you're getting history, and you can't change history, and you can't change it to work for television. That's a limit for me.
No, absolutely. Much respect to you for that as well. I appreciate that. So I very much appreciate the researchers that are interested in the history more than making lights light up on stuff. So that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I don't know if I want to transition here, and I don't want to say that it's darker or lighter, but my question is, we've been kind of bad mouthing TV shows and stuff, and I'm like, I want to make it a better topic, but I don't think this is a better topic, but we're going to go with this. So with a lot of history, like these areas that have high tragedy, and a lot of, like Gettysburg and Salem and all these places that have had all this trauma and death and stuff to it, it always makes you wonder, like, when people talk about the paranormal, we see them in like always period clothing, right? We don't see, people running around or ghosts running around with Britney Spears t-shirts, right? This is the old trope and stuff. So my thought is have you thought about anything around like the World Trade Centers in New York?
Well, so this is a topic that's kind of hits a little hard for me because I actually lived in New York City during 9/11. And so I was there. I actually saw the towers go down, so it's kind of a tragedy for me. So I have a limit. For me it's 50 years, and so it still hasn't been 50. Or no, it hasn't been 50 years yet because it's
No.
2001.
Yeah.
But for me, yes, I do feel like that there's a lot of energy in New York City. In fact, I left New York City because I couldn't handle the energy after 9/11. I was very successful in New York. I was working there until 2004. I have gone back. I just wrote the book Goes to Sleepy Hollow, so I'm kind of like incrementally going back because it was so. It was PTSD. I had trauma associated with what I saw on that day. And I know other people were watching it on our television were affected, but I was there. I saw people fall out of the building, and that you can never erase that in your mind. So and so being sensitive to that sort of thing and seeing a horrific tragedy happen in front of me, I am going to be more empathetic, and I have been for these types of situations, like making, going. I do believe that we should honor the victims, and I think like my experience going back to New York and kind of going there, I will say that every time I go back, I have flashbacks to what happened, and it's been since more than 20 years, almost 25 years, and so I feel like that it's like it happened yesterday for me. So what was the question? So the question is, what is it? Is it something that is it going to leave an imprint? It absolutely did. Yes.
Yeah.
It did.
Do you
It did. And
do you think it's going to end up being like a Gettysburg battlefield kind of energy or a Salem energy or something in that area?
no, because I feel like because the nature of New York City, and I think that New York, I think New York is before 9/11 was very haunted. I remember like living there and working there and walking by Washington Square Park and having something grab my leg at the same spot pretty much every day when I walked to work from my apartment to my job, and looking down and there was nobody there. And it turns out that was a mass grave for tuberculosis victims. So it doesn't have potential for that, absolutely. But I think because the nature of New York City, it's such a fast-paced, fast-moving city. I'm surprised every time I go back how it's not it's not more of a thing, it's not talked about more. It's weird because I like every time I go back, something will happen. Like I'll bump into somebody that's a little kind of close to age in me, and I'm like, "Were you here during 9/11?" Or somehow the topic will come about, and like every Uber driver, and they tell me their story, and I tell them my story, and so we are remembering it. But I think the nature of New York City, it just kind of they quickly forget there because it's so fast paced. So it may be a little different than say like a kind of like a sleepy town like Gettysburg. Even Salem. Salem is for the most part is kind of like a quiet little North Shore community that's by the water, and the claim to fame is the witch trials. And I think for me personally, and like you said before, that you have issue with paranormal tourism, and really so do they. They're not making their money from paranormal tourism. They're making their money from history. And so it's sort of like they don't allow paranormal investigation in Salem. So they're not really in that school. But the tourism, people visiting Salem because of Hocus Pocus and because of the witch trials. My goal really with Salem is for people not to forget. And I think that history repeats itself over and over again. And I think that the witch hunt in 1692 continues to this day, and we still have witch hunts now. Maybe not to the extreme that we had it back then. But if you're different, then you could be in the same situation. So I advocate for remembering that history, and I think it's important for us to tell that story. So that part of it, I think, is definitely why I stick around. That's why I write books about it. And same with 9/11. Like, obviously, we don't want that to happen again. I do think, yes, I do feel like that there's probably definitely hauntings associated with it. But I also feel that the nature of New York City will they just kind of bulldoze forward, and I hate to say it, they kind of like plow over their history, but they do. And I think that New England's different because we keep all of our old buildings. So we have stuff that's from the 1600s still sticking around. We don't tear down our old buildings, and New York does. And I think a lot of the energy is lost when you tear down the buildings. So I think it's just the types of the way things are in New York versus more fast paced versus the sleepiness of New Orleans and Gettysburg and Savannah. I think that those towns are special, and it's all those, like the Civil War, like what happened in the Civil War in Gettysburg. I mean, we need to remember that. I mean, like, there was mass casualties in Gettysburg, and I will say, like, energy wise, like in Salem, I feel super drained, and Gettysburg, I don't. I feel very different in Gettysburg. Like, as a historian, I feel like I'm like surrounded by history. You know, like I can feel it, and that's a wonderful feeling. But the amount of men and women that died in the battle, what happened in Gettysburg is a lot of people. So that's going to leave an imprint that's going to last for a long time. And also, I'm a big believer in reenactments stir the pot as well. So when you talked about, ghosts wearing colonial garb, I think that, or Civil War era garb, a lot of it has to do with the fact that you have reenactors kind of like stirring the pot and causing them to, like, I guess, respond to that. Because, like, hey, I see someone similar to me, so I'm going to present myself, to what's going on. And and this is something that I'm not sure, as someone that focuses on what you focus on, I'm a big believer. I don't think that what we're dealing with are disembodied souls. I think when you have a trauma, they're like fragments of pieces of, like, splinters, I call them, splinters that psychically imprint itself on the land. So we're not dealing with a disembodied soul of Giles Corey in Salem or Bridget Bishop. We're dealing at the part that there was extreme emotion. That extreme emotion imprinted itself in the land or in the property. And that's, as a medium, we will pick that up, or even people that are not mediums will pick that up. And I think when you walk into a town like Salem and you're like, oh my gosh, Salem is so haunted, we're not dealing with like disembodied spirits walking the streets of Salem. We're dealing with pieces that were left almost like splinters, like this, like little pieces that were left behind.
No, I 100% agree with that as well. I've had a lot of mediums and psychics and stuff on the show, and they kind of say that, like, when you have these tragedies and stuff happen, that a little bit of the soul, or like you said, a splinter, kind of fragments off and is left there. So, like, it's not necessarily that the soul is trapped forever walking, the battlefield. It's that, they've moved on, they're happy, they're in their other place, but there's this little shadow of them that's still there, that's imprinted. And I agree. And to your other point as well, like I said, I've been to Salem, I've been to Gettysburg, and I was thinking about this, and I tend to agree also that Gettysburg was very historic. Like, everything there felt like it had an energy, a soul, a history, like living history in that town. And when I was in Salem, it just kind of was moody and depressing, kind of, and not the haunted, weird energy, but more of a eerie kind of energy, I guess. I don't know, but yeah, you're 100% right on that too, I think.
And like in Salem, I can't live in Salem because I feel so drained when I'm there. And Gettysburg, I felt energized. So I feel surrounded by history. I feel that there's a reverence for that history, and even just like going on the tours, I do feel that there is a reverence for the people that died in the battle in Gettysburg, and just every shop that you go to. In Salem, there's more. There's witch shops, and there's more of the new witch. And I will say this: what I do love about that, though, is that it's what has become a place where people were executed for being different. Now they're being embraced for being different, and I think I love that it's been turned around and it's now an accepting place. In fact, like Salem, even the past like 15 years, I've been going there, I mean, for a long time, since college, and not to age myself, but I've been actively working and writing books on Salem since for like the past 13, 14 years. And it's changed dramatically since then. I remember thinking when I first started giving tours in 2011, 2012, thinking that it was trapped in the 80s, because I felt like every time I would go to Salem, I felt like I was going back like 50, but not not the 1680s. I was going back to the 1980s. And so I feel like that they really have advanced, and I think along with that, they've also have become more educated, and it's more focused on getting the facts correct. I mean, we've even found out new facts since I first started writing about Salem, and I think I feel like as someone that writes about the ghosts, I think that the paranormal community did, I guess, push that narrative, like to really focus on telling the story correctly. Like one thing that was in my book that no one talked about really was the actual location where the innocent men and women were executed, and the hanging. So it's called Proctor's Ledge now, but back when I first started, so I was the first person to write about it in my book, Ghosts of Salem, and I said, X marks the spot based on what I can gather. This is where it was. It was actually right behind the real location was right behind a Walgreens, and people were wanting it to be. They were wanting it to be at another location that was fairly close to that. They wanted it to be Gallows Hill, and so they were kind of sending people to Gallows Hill. And the truth is that that's not where it happened. It happened behind a Walgreens, and it was private property. So what they did is they erected a memorial at the actual location. And I do think it's very haunted, but I go there to honor the victims. Like I don't go to downtown Salem or even to the Witch Trials Memorial, which I have spent so many like days at that spot, whether it's giving tours or just going to honoring the victims. I now have a place that's sort of, I feel like that I really am talking to the victims. Like I'm like honoring them. And I do go there. I try to go at least once a year to honor them.
That's awesome. I just want to remind everyone we are live. We do have quite a few people. We got 8 or more here watching live. If you guys have a favorite haunted location or something, haunted town, or any questions for Sam, throw them in here and we will get to them before we wrap things up here on today's show. Thank you all again for tuning in so early. It's like I said at the beginning, we're night owls, so this is the perfect time for us. Instead of doing a pre-recorded show, we can do it live. So that's awesome. But
you guys are troopers for showing up this early.
Hey, it works good for paranormal investigating because then I'm up all night and I'm not even tired. So, and then I get to drive home afterwards, and it works great. So awesome. You also have a new book that you're working on, this anthology. Tell everybody about that.
Yeah, so the anthology came out of a class that I taught called Ghostwriters with Sam Baltrusis. So it's really important for me, now that I've written 18 books, to kind of give back to the community. And I think that I do that. I have a group called Spirit Squad where I work with mediums that as a mentor, and a group called Ghostwriters. And Ghostwriters is a group of writers. And I was a journalist for about 20 years before I was actually a paranormal author. So our approach is more, I would say, paranormal journalism. And so the class, as a group, we kind of came up with the idea of doing an anthology. And so this was about, I would say, 2.5 years ago. So we're finally we made it a reality. And so we turned a group passion of a group of like 10 students into this beautiful book. I'm so proud of it. It's called Haunted Travels Anthology, and it's coming out the 13th of June, Friday the 13th. And we have established writers. We have Joni Mahan, who is one of the contributors, Mark Muncy, who wrote Erie, Florida. And Ryan Buell, who we talked about earlier in the Annabelle situation, he was on Paranormal State. He wrote the foreword to the book. And so I love it. I think it turned out fantastic. And it features many of the locations we talked about today. So first book that I've written where I don't write about Salem, because I feel like I write about Salem in every book that I write somehow. But there's a story on Savannah. There's a story on New Orleans. There's a story I wrote a story on Wilson Castle in Proctor, Vermont. And I wrote a story basically on locations that were open to the paranormal and they closed their doors. So like why? Because we have a couple locations in Massachusetts specifically, like the Oliver House and even the S.K. Pierce Victorian Mansion, two very, very well-known haunted locations that have recently shut their doors, and and both amazing histories. And I feel like that the paranormal really did a lot for them. But I also there's reasons why these places are closing their doors to the paranormal community. Kind of alluding to what you talked about before. Are we the drive for everything being demonic? Are we kind of shutting down these locations for paranormal investigators because of that? I mean, like they're getting scratched, and all sorts of things you see at these haunted locations, and not really focusing on the history. Is that what's causing these places to close down? But so that's kind of the finale of Haunted Travels Anthology. But I really hope that it inspires people to travel. So I know that you said you're kind of against paranormal tourism. This book is all about paranormal tourism. So.
I don't mind paranormal tourism if it's like we said, respectful, and you're learning something. That's the most important thing. Yeah. If you know the history of a location and you go there, to speak with the spirit and a specific spirit to learn from them and talk to them, instead of just, can you make this light up? Can you make a noise? Can you do something? And just the same, ooh, it made a noise, I'm scared and I'm going to run out. That's the difference for me. If people are going and learning about these areas and, care about them and respect the spirits of the people and stuff are there, that's what I appreciate.
And I really feel like that, like my personal experience, I have seen growth in that arena. I think that there are of course some shows that will not be named that provoke. I think that everybody that I have worked with, and I travel all over the country, so I work with people, and I heading to Wisconsin again at the Broadhead Manor coming up for the Paranormal Rockdown in July. And, such a lovely group of people. Everybody was respectful. I think that everywhere I've gone across the country, they all say the same thing. They want this. They want us to be respectful. They embrace history. Or maybe I've just been very lucky to be exposed to the good ones. But I've met a lot of people that think that's saying what we're saying here, and all over the country. So I think that it's becoming the norm, to be honest with you. And I'm proud of us for doing that, because we didn't have, I hate to say it, we didn't have good role models. We didn't have good television role models for us, but some of them have been good role models. And I think that the people that write the books, the people like us that are in the field, been passionate about educating the up and comers. And I think that those are the ones that are the next generation, and they are different. I think these are different.
Absolutely. We have a couple comments here for you. It says, Nathan says, want haunted places? Come to Tennessee. Lots of Revolutionary War locations. I live at one Gower area neighborhood, and right in Nashville, totally haunted.
Yeah.
One more here. Here you have to be respectful, or the residents will let you know. There you go.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. What do you have any haunted locations and stuff you've written about from Tennessee? So, I mean,
I keep going back to Tennessee. I keep getting called back. So I went to Old Harriman Hospital, and that with Richard Estep, and actually it was for one of his books. So sometimes I'll go with other authors, and I'll be the kind of like the guest medium. And so I went to Harriman Hospital, which is right outside of Knoxville, Tennessee, and I love that. I going back to, it's called Creepy Con. I tend to go to Pigeon Forge and Knoxville. I love that area. So that's the area that I keep kind of getting called back to. I grew up in Pensacola, so even like we had a hurricane, we would always like drive up because we were right on the coast of the Gulf Coast. We would drive up to Tennessee every time that there was a hurricane. So I had a lot of time growing up in Nashville. Like I love Nashville. So, but that's more from my childhood and not as an adult, as a paranormal investigator. The thing that I am so fascinated with is the Bell Witch, and I would love to do the caves, and I think that's gonna. I can feel it happening. Like maybe this year. It hasn't been planned, but I can feel it happening.
Very cool. Very cool. Awesome. He says East Tennessee is the most haunted. The whole state will tell you. There you go. Interesting. Awesome. Well,
yeah, I think Knoxville's east. Yeah, I think it's like that area is. And also too, I mentioned Mark Muncy. Mark wrote a story on Tennessee for Haunted Travels anthology. So he wrote, it's called the Lightning Lady, and it's Katie's Cove is the name of the location in Tennessee, and so yeah, he wrote about that, and it's a great story.
Very cool. Very cool. Awesome. Well, we are coming up here on the end of the show. I want to thank everyone for tuning in so early here and indulging myself and Sam and our sleep schedules and making a wonderful morning for both of us. Sam, where can people get your books? You talked about being at Paranormal Rock down here in Wisconsin. Where else are you going to be? Where can they come meet you in person, get some autographed books, and what do you got coming up?
Yeah, so I'm literally booked every weekend until November. So coming up for me, I have I make sure I get all the stuff. So I have the Con Carolinas coming up at the very end of the month, and I'm speaking pretty much like 4 or 5 times at Con Carolina. That's right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. In a day, I'm actually going to be in Virginia, and I'm doing what's called Spirit Squad Weekend. It's at the Belgrove Plantation in King George. So that's sort of like a private group, and that group, again, I love Spirit Squad. They're very respectful to the spirits. And Belgrove, I'm sure and that's another thing. When I go to a location, I go in cold. I just did Trevette Clinic, which is like also close to Charlotte, North Carolina. So I'm going to North Carolina a lot this year. And then coming up in the summer, I have we're launching Haunted Travels Anthology at the Paranormal Seekers Convention and right outside of Nashua, New Hampshire, and that's in July. Paranormal Rockdown's coming up. I'm doing the Haunted America in Illinois. That's coming up also in the summer. And then I have the big one, so Dragon Con. I did it last year and it was amazing. And that's in Atlanta, right outside of Atlanta, Georgia. And then I'm doing the main Paracon and the one in Connecticut. So look. Like if you go to my website, sambaltrusis.com, you can see all my events. It changes every day. Like I add more stuff. I'm already booking stuff in 2026. I've been asked back to Trevette because I had such a wonderful experience at the Trevette Clinic. And then I am going to Louisiana to the Cajun Paracon. And that's going to be my first time. Speaking of Louisiana, like New Orleans, I love that area. But every time I try to go to New Orleans, something happens. So this is my time. I'm going to make sure that the last time I was supposed to be there was a snowstorm in New Orleans, and it kept me from going. So I'm like, you know what? Either I have to. And I talked to my friend Patty Negri about this, and she's like, you have to like go in and you have to like let the city welcome you. And so I'm going to go in and just like introduce myself almost like you do with spirits. It's like, hi there, my name is Sam. I'm here to tell your story respectfully. And then once it embraces you, you keep wanting to come back. So that's my approach. And hopefully I will be able to make it to New Orleans this time.
I wish you luck. There's the 2 corners of the U.S. I always say that I haven't been to, and that'd be down by Florida, Louisiana. I've gone as far as Georgia and South Carolina. And then I haven't been to Montana, Oregon, and Washington, but every other state I've driven through or been to. So
Yeah, I love that you like even though you didn't spend a lot of time, you made an effort to go and try to go in every state in New England, and I love
Yes, thank you.
that. I think I mean even for me, I'm actually going to. I've never been to. I mean, I've been to California before, but like my dream location, I'm going to Alcatraz. I'm doing an event at the USS Hornet right outside of San Francisco, but I've actually have never been. I've been at the airport, but I've never been in that area. So I'm spending a couple of days there and going to Alcatraz this summer. So I think what it does is it gives you a little taste, and you want to come back and hopefully you'll come back to New England.
Absolutely. I look forward to it. But awesome, man. Well, it's been fabulous talking to you. We have so many other things that we could talk about, I'm sure, and I will have to have you back on and see what you got coming up down the road. We didn't even get to your new book. Do you want to real quickly your book that you're working on about the castles?
Oh yeah, so I mean that's something that's still a work in progress. It's not due until July, so it's probably not going to come out until October. But it's called Haunted Castles of New England, and people ask me, wait a minute, do we have castles in New England? And if you're expecting it to be castles that you find overseas, like in the UK, Scotland, Wales, that it's not the same kind of castle, but we do have versions of it. And I think they're kind of an Americanized versions of it. Like Newport, Rhode Island has beautiful mansions that kind of mimic castles, and of course we have Hammond Castle in Gloucester. So these it's been so much fun doing the research on it, and it should be coming out this fall. And it's called Haunted Castles of New England.
Awesome. Very cool. I know my mom is big into castles and stuff, so she'll definitely be interested in that one. She does all the research and stuff for our team, and that's very cool. Very cool.
I've always been drawn to castles myself, and I'm sure that there's a reason, maybe a past life or something that involves castles. But I will tell you, like every time I go, it's like I get transported back in time. It's almost like this weird portal to like a time travel portal.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Well, we'll have to stay in touch, and when your book comes out, we can have you back on and tell us all about your castles and what you're working on then. So,
all right, awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for coming on today and sharing your morning, or I guess evening, for us together. And I really appreciate it. So you have a wonderful sleep. I don't know what you're gonna do now, but have a good night or good day, whatever you're into right now. So take care, man. I will talk to you later.
All right, thank you. Have a great day.
All right, guys, that is our show for this week. Thank you all for tuning in and watching live with us and indulging myself and Sam, who are third shifters, and just easier to do a live show today than do a pre-recorded. It was a lot of fun, and hopefully you guys all enjoyed the show. And if you're tuning in later, well, you missed it. It was live. You weren't here. Sorry. But you can always still enjoy it after the fact and check it out. And I hope that you will. And check out all of Sam's books, as well as the stuff that he's coming out. It seems like he's going to be all over the United States. So he will be coming to a haunted town near you very soon. So that is it. But until next time, guys, check out Sam's website in the show notes, as well as all things here on the Untold Radio Network and Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society. Until next time, guys, remember, we're all part of the Paranormal Spectrum. Take care, be well, and I'll see you next week.
You seem to know something